Yes, that's enough.
Solve people problems. So there's different ways that you can try to get attention back in the gathering. I'm going to try this one in this gathering. I say free, you say?
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
I say free, free, you say?
Awesome.
Free, free,
Awesome.
free.
Awesome.
Say word. If I could ask everyone that's at the back of the room to come and close the circle, to bring the people together. I'm going to try to keep this address relatively brief because the time is precious. We might need to adjust the gain on this mic.
No, I'm doing it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, there we go. I'll do the Lahim Shaitan Rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So first of all, I want to thank every single person that took time out of their lives. There's a lot of different ways you could choose to use your time on a Saturday afternoon, but coming together to take concrete action towards collective liberation is one of the most noble and enlightened uses of time that a human being could possibly commit their time to. So I want to thank every last one of you. Your time is precious and the time is short. And turn to the person that's seated next to you, see them, and thank them for showing up as well.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up.
So we've acknowledged all of the soldiers in this room that are still above ground. But Shyla Ray, with her invocation of her indigenous ancestors, our indigenous ancestors, was reminding us that we have a debt to struggle for liberation in this moment that is to generations that came before us. And we have an obligation to struggle for liberation in this moment for generations that are not yet born. So take a moment and whatever your tradition of faith or remembrance may be, bow your head with a word of prayer, remembrance, or thanksgiving for those ancestors that brought you to this place. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to address 3 topics and 3 topics only in the short time that we have together this afternoon. The first topic is simple and straightforward: why we fight. The second topic is how we fight. And the third topic is how we win. And I ask that you acknowledge your fellow soldiers, your comrades in arms, and also those that came before us. Because the first part of why we fight is because of those unpaid debts that are owed to the ancestors that came before us, whether, by the way, they were from amongst the oppressed or the oppressors. Because even those of us that have a little bit of colonizer DNA flowing through our bloodstreams, that we can expiate some of the sins of our forefathers by standing for justice in this moment. DNA is not destiny. We will determine the way that we are remembered. We will determine the way that the stories of this time are told and the songs that are sung by future generations with the actions that we take in this moment. I fight because my indigenous and enslaved ancestors prayed for a day where the death of empire and colonialism would be in sight. And I see that day in front of us. I see that day. I don't know if y'all can see it. I see it better than I see you. So I'll start with why we fight, and I have to start with why I fight. Every narrative of collective liberation begins with meditation and contemplation upon why you choose to take action, why you choose to rise. And this story is going to be different for every single one of you, but I'll tell you my story. When I was 15 years old, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read that book cover to cover in one night. I could not put it down. I went from my bed to the corner of my room to laying down flat on my stomach to laying on my back. I read it from beginning to end. And the reason why I could not put that book down was that Malcolm was speaking from beyond the grave to deep recesses in my soul. He was narrating the trauma of his experience with incredible candor and clarity. Malcolm talked about what white supremacy had done to him and his family. His father, a Garveyite, killed by white supremacists. His mother driven to madness by neglect from the state. Malcolm in foster care. Malcolm becoming a street hustler. Malcolm in and out of jail. Malcolm into prison. And that story spoke to me because I had seen a lot of those same places that Malcolm spoke of. My father, God rest his soul, Rudolph Ware Jr., Butch, as he was known. Y'all call me Butch, but if you go to Georgia, I'm Lil Butch. Because my father was Butch. And Butch had a hard life. He had a 6th grade education, and he was a locksmith who hustled to make ends meet. And my mother, Christine Trainer, she's still with us. May God give her good health and long life. She was 15 years old when she was pregnant with me. Told by her high school guidance counselor that she should abort the child because she was pregnant by a black man. That was DC in 1973. Her guidance counselor told her that if she had the baby, she would be strung out on heroin and turning tricks by the time she was 17. That was her high school guidance counselor. I spent the first 9 years of my life not living at the same street address for a consecutive calendar year because we were in and out of public housing, battered women's shelter, staying with relatives. I had seen a lot of what white supremacy had to offer. Grew up in crushing poverty. And when Malcolm spoke, the words resonated with me. And I saw what Malcolm became despite the crushing weight that had been on him, and I wanted what Malcolm had. Why do I fight? I went out to my public school library the next day, having not slept, having read the autobiography of Malcolm X in one night, and I checked out an English translation of the Quran. If Islam was good enough for Malcolm, I needed to learn more about it, and I read that book cover to cover the next night. I converted to Islam before the week was out. That was my initiation into my personal faith tradition of Islam, into an understanding of what is sacred. But it was also my initiation into the sacred tradition of Black revolutionary struggle. And Malcolm has been my teacher at distance ever since. The reason why I fight is because I want to honor those revolutionary ancestors, like El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, like Assata Shakur, who has just transitioned into the realm of the ancestors, like Huey P. Newton, like Fred Hampton, like Frederick Douglass, those who laid down their lives to move forward the struggle for liberation. They cleared fields in which we must now farm. They honored and sanctified this wretched settler colony with their tears and their sweat and their blood, and they produced a binding moral obligation upon those of us who have living hearts to finish the work that they left for us, to finish the work of liberation. That's why I fight. You may fight because they are your genealogical ancestors, your spiritual ancestors, your role models. Your people might have been indigenous, they might have been African, they might be immigrants, but they have all been touched, brutalized, and harmed by this American empire, and it must end. And it is our job to end it. We cannot kick this down the road to the next generation. We are not going to pass this debt on to our children. But I don't just fight because I understand the gravity of the moral obligation into which I was born. I fight with hope and revolutionary fervor because I have absolute certainty that we will win. It is not a certainty that is born upon false hope or wishful thinking. It is a certainty that is bred and nourished by a sound understanding of history. And again, Malcolm, my first teacher, posthumously, Malcolm said, of all of the fields of study, history is best qualified to reward our research. And when he said our research, he meant us, the revolutionaries. Make a careful study of the past. See, when I read that Quran the second night after reading Malcolm's autobiography, I had just read this powerful personal narrative of spiritual redemption and overcoming inner demons and external oppressors. And then I read this book, this Quran, which is one of our great traditions of faith and spiritual teaching. And there are other traditions of faith and spiritual teaching. But this lasting lesson that I found in that Quran, I later realized was embedded in all of our traditions, all of our sacred and secular traditions. And it is a very, very simple truth that can be summarized in 3 words. All empires fall. All empires fall. Some of you have despaired of our chances at victory. I know that our victory is assured. Our victory was written on eternal tablets before we entered this world. Oppressors are doomed. Every last one of them. But we must pay the wages in struggle and in sacrifice and in solidarity and in love to inherit that which has always been our birthright. Our birthright is freedom. Our birthright is liberation. Our birthright is justice. Our birthright is this green earth, not destroyed by oppressors and polluters, not bombed into submission. But we are going to have to fight to claim our birthright. Do y'all understand my words?
Yes.
This is why we fight. So, what were the 3 things? Sorry, I'm going to do the professor thing. I'll be asking pop quizzes. So I said I was going to talk about 3 things, right? What was the first one? What's the second one? And what's the third one? A triple plus, right? How we fight, chapter 2. It was Malcolm El-Hajj Malik Shabazz that said, we are not outnumbered, we are only outorganized. Say it back. We are not outnumbered, we are only outorganized. That's it. You missed a couple of notes in there. We're right there. We're going to do a call and response thing again in a minute, so get those vocal cords warmed up. We are not outnumbered. We are only out-organized. No, we don't have to do it. I asked for that. I can't pretend that I didn't. Malcolm went on after he said we're not outnumbered, we're out-organized. He said, never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. Never let the man that you are against form your opinions for you. See, alongside some of us having been conditioned to believe that empire is invulnerable and impregnable and cannot be defeated, many of us have internalized our enemy's estimation of our capacity. We believe that we are weak. We believe that we are outnumbered. And it is those mental chains, those chains on our thinking and our consciousness, those chains upon our heart that are the first enemy that must be defeated in any liberation struggle. The how we fight begins by removing the colonizer's narrative from your heart, from your soul, from your spirit, from your mentality, from rooting yourself in your sacred and secular traditions of struggle, in reclaiming the narrative, one in which we are powerful and empowered, ready to fight, ready to bring victory. Because it is only when we are thoroughly convinced of this as an inevitability, as a reality that is just beyond our grasp in this temporal moment, but that we will seize tomorrow, that we will have the resolve and the moral clarity that is necessary to fight in order to achieve that liberation. How we fight starts with killing the cop and the colonizer that exists in your consciousness. And once those chains, this damn thing, once those chains, Lord have mercy, once those chains are off your heart, then we can talk strategy and tactics. So let's talk strategy and tactics. I learned from Malcolm after he was gone, but we had great revolutionary heroes and leaders that were able to learn from Malcolm while he was still amongst us and not amongst the ancestors. One of the great people that learned from Malcolm in life and has given us many profound lessons for revolutionary organizing is the late, great Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture, born Stokely Carmichael, was with SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee. He eventually ends up founding All African People's Revolutionary Party, and he was able to implement many of Malcolm's lessons on organizing and to crystallize these for us. And I want to start with one simple and straightforward lesson that Kwame Ture synthesized from his own experience and from Malcolm's teaching. It can be summarized with the following phrase. Revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. That one's tough. I'm gonna say it again, then y'all gonna say it back. Revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. 10 words. Say it. Revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. See, when Dr. Jill Stein invited when Dr. Jill Stein called me out of community organizing work, activist work, educational work, community educational work to take up electoral politics, and asked if I would consider running as the vice presidential candidate for the Green Party, I said, I'm going to consider this. And I went back to Malcolm and Kwame Ture and what they had said about electoral politics, and I'll talk about that in the how we win component. But I gave Jill and her team what I consider to be a pretty straightforward warning. I said, while I'm considering this offer, y'all better go run tape on me. And make sure that this is what you want. because you are inviting a black Muslim revolutionary into position of leadership in the Green Party. And that means that whether you are aware of this or not, that this is going to become a revolutionary party for opposition. I'm not interested in reform. I'm not interested in tweaks to the system. I'm not interested in preserving capitalism. I'm here to destroy it. I'm not interested in managing empire. I'm here to end it. I'm not interested in coddling white supremacists. I'm here to finish them. This is a revolutionary liberation agenda, and revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues, revolutionaries organize against systems. Now, this is the core of how we fight. How many of us stood up in 2020 and marched and protested and mobilized after George Floyd was choked out over 8 minutes and 46 seconds? And had you ever seen such massive mobilizations against police brutality in all your life? No. Never. Ferguson came nowhere close to what we saw. Mass mobilization. The first time I marched against police brutality was because a kid in my neighborhood in South Minneapolis got killed in his own backyard with a squirt gun by the police. Playing with a squirt gun in his backyard, got shot dead. And when we went out to march against police brutality, my mom was the only white person at the march. Now, 2020, we saw white folks outnumbering black folks 5-1 at marches against police brutality. Mass mobilization on a scale that none of us ever expected to see. But did we have effective organization against the system? No. Because we just had mass mobilization. And because we did not organize against the system, police killed more people in every year since 2020. They've set a new record in every year. Team Blue came into power and reinforced the police powers of a police state. Mass mobilization, not organization against the system. This is important. Start to reflect on how we fight. Example number 2. I see all of the fly kafiyas. I see my brother with the Free Palestine truck. Get your photo with his truck before you go. I know you've seen it before you came in. Everybody here has been standing 10 toes down for Palestinian liberation since at least October 2023, and some of us have been 10 toes down for Palestinian liberation for decades. And those of us that have been down since day one, because Malcolm taught us, and James Baldwin taught us, and Stokely Carmichael taught us that the fight against Zionism was a fight against white supremacist settler colonialism that implicated every single person that wants to fight against white supremacy. Those of us that knew what we were fighting against have been fighting for decades. Many of y'all just got unplugged from the Matrix, since like October, November 2023, and that's fine. We need soldiers and converts coming aboard at all times. But those of us that were down since day one never thought we would see crowds of tens of thousands of people standing for Palestinian liberation, marching through the streets. Mass mobilization. But have we organized against the system that has been producing Nakba since 48? That has been producing genocide, really, and war crimes before that, right? Going back to the Irgun. We are yet to marshal the effective organization against the system that produces genocide, that produces apartheid. So despite the fact that we have had great mass mobilization, we have not had effective resistance. And the reason is simple and straightforward. This is another one from Kwame Ture. He said, nonviolent protest is only effective if your enemy has a conscience, and America has none. You are not going to protest your way to liberation. And I know some of y'all are going to get hurt by that. I like a good protest as much as the next guy, but protest, you cannot make a moral appeal to oppressors. Because if they had morality, they wouldn't be oppressors. You have to fight them for power. They speak no other language. They speak no other language except for power. You cannot shame them into desisting from theft, mass murder, and genocide, because this is the same white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist playbook that they have been on since 1492. You are not going to talk them out of it. You must defeat them. And defeating them means organizing to contest them for power. Last example in the how we fight before we get to the how we win. We were all reduced to, if not physical tears, then at least we were reduced to like emotional basket cases after we watched Gestapo pig unload 3 rounds into the face of Renee Good in my hometown, second hometown in Minneapolis. We all saw it, and we have seen the escalations of ICE all in our streets. Masks on, pulling up, kidnapping and violating our neighbors, destroying our communities. And we have seen some of the most massive mobilizations and protests against ICE escalations that any of us have ever witnessed. We've seen people out in the streets in LA, we've seen people out in the streets in Chicago, and we've seen people out in the streets, but we are not going to mobilize our way to liberation. We have to organize our way to liberation. Because the same system is underwriting every one of those fundamental evils. The same police state that has had its knee on the neck of Black America. The same police state that had me stopped 17 times by the police before I reached my 18th birthday. One of those stops was on the corner of 36th and 10th in South Minneapolis, a few blocks away from where Renee Good was slaughtered. They've been on this game. And in that particular traffic stop, when that officer asked me to produce my identification, I reached into my starter jacket to pull it out, and when I reached into my jacket, he put his service weapon right in my face. He could have emptied 3 rounds into my grill right on the spot. I would have never been standing here. They have been on this game plan. And we've been trying to warn you, but have we been organizing? The same police state that was responsible for brutalizing me, for brutalizing my father, for brutalizing my grandfather, is being weaponized against the Mexican American community, the broader Latino community, immigrants, anyone that stands with them, anyone that would resist. That same police state has been marshaled in order to cow you into silence because you stand up and say, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. It is all the same system. It is a system that is predicated on imperialism, capitalism, and white supremacy, and it will not desist in any of its visible manifestations that crush our communities until we destroy the system itself. And the destruction of the system itself will not take place through words. It will take place through a contest of power, which brings me to point 3, how we win. Sorry, I've been teaching for a long time, and I know that look on y'all's face. It happens to my undergraduate students where they're all just like all in their feelings and like, everybody just take a deep breath. I promise this story has a happy ending. Let go of some of that burden that y'all are holding right now. Glory to the resistance. When Dr. Jill asked me if I would consider running as the vice presidential candidate, I had to give this a lot of thought, because I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't really believe in electoral politics like that. I don't. And I did not really believe that electoral political interventions was necessarily going to be the way that we were going to be victorious in the struggle. But when I was presented with that opportunity, I had to make it a matter of careful reflection. So who was the first person that I went to? Malcolm, of course. So I went back to 1964, the Ballad of the Bullet, a speech that Malcolm delivered twice, April 3rd, 1964 in Cleveland, and then April 12th in Detroit. And in each of those speeches, Malcolm said, the ballot is a weapon of war as effective or more effective even than the bullet. Y'all forgot that part, didn't you? See, y'all thought that the Ballad of the Bullet was just an ultimatum to white supremacist America, that we're gonna have our freedom, whether you wanna do this the easy way or the hard way, whether you wanna do this in the streets or at the ballot box. But that was not the only ultimatum that Malcolm made in that speech. Malcolm was saying we are gonna get our freedom whether we gotta take it by the bullet or by the ballot. But he was also saying that a ballot is a weapon of war as effective or more effective even than a bullet. And then in the Cleveland version of that speech, Malcolm said, we are going to knock on every door in Harlem, and we are going to register every black face behind every door, not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, but independent. We are going to say to them, show us your card. And whatever black face is behind that door that has not had the responsibility to go register themselves, we might just move them out of town. It is going to be the ballot or the bullet. End quote. Malcolm told us that we actually do not have a moral or ethical option of choosing not to use electoral strategies. And once I realized that this was what Malcolm had said, I looked to my other revolutionary heroes, the Black Panthers, Huey P. Newton, revolutionary suicide. He said the spirit of Malcolm was with us when we formed the Panthers. We read everything that Malcolm had ever said. Nobody was more down for revolutionary struggle than the Panthers were, and that's why they took out Fred Hampton, that's why they took out Huey P., because they were terrified of a jet black movement that could nonetheless inspire young lords, Puerto Rican Marxist-Leninist organization, that could nonetheless inspire brown berets, young patriots, the original Rainbow Coalition. The system was terrified of the Panthers because the Panthers were true revolutionaries. But Huey P. Newton ran for Congress not once but twice. Bobby Seale ran for mayor of Oakland in 1973. The Panthers utilized electoral political strategies as part of their efforts to contest for power. They had a simple formula, one that is on our campaign website, Butch, Ware for Gov, and it is straightforward. Mutual aid plus direct action plus electoral politics, in that order. We have to take care of one another. We have to build community. We have to meet our folks' basic needs. We have to stand together to take direct action for collective liberation. Strikes, direct actions, not protests, direct action. Direct action seeks a particular outcome. It doesn't just say, we don't like this. They don't care that you don't like it. In fact, some of them like it when you tell them how much you don't like it. They get off on oppressing you. Don't shed no tears in front of these people. Don't give them the satisfaction. Fight them. Mutual aid plus direct action plus electoral politics. They utilized electoral politics in every instance because it is an instrument that can be used to organize the people and leverage the people's power. Kwame Ture said, voting every 4 years is the height of bourgeois hypocrisy. But I would shed my blood for the vote, and I have, because I know the vote is how I organize my people. This campaign is the electoral arm of the revolutionary liberation movement. Which brings us to how we win. I told you what Malcolm said, we're not outnumbered, we're out-organized. I told you what Kwame Ture said, revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues, revolutionaries organize against systems. Now I tell you what I say. The role of a revolutionary political party is to channel the people's energy from mobilization around issues into organization against systems. The role of this revolutionary movement and this revolutionary campaign is to take all of that siloed energy of resisting ICE, of standing for Palestinian liberation, of standing for queer and trans rights, all of the pieces of independent struggle, and bring them together to lead the masses to collective liberation. That is why we're here. That is why we fight, and it is how we are going to win. The last part, victory is closer than any of y'all realize.
Yeah.
Y'all think that I'm just up here telling y'all pretty words, things that you need to hear or want to hear. But I've run the numbers. Our team has crunched the data. We are 5 months away from destroying the duopoly in the state of California. And watching this from some other place and don't live inside the state of California need to get down with this revolutionary program in the state of California, the birthplace of the Panthers, because this is where it's going to happen. You better either get down or lay down because it's going down. And why? Because they've made a series of incredible tactical mistakes that leave them shockingly vulnerable to attack in the state of California through electoral political mechanisms. Because what Malcolm said in '64 about the ballot being a mandatory weapon that you must take up is even more true today. The corporate capture of the mainstream media, now of social media, and of those two political parties is more complete than it was then. Elections are one of our last best chances to get our freedom, because they still have to listen when the voice of the people has spoken. And if you put me, an actual anti-imperialist, revolutionary, anti-Zionist in the governor's mansion, that's the fucking end of the Democrats. They will never recover from losing the core of their power. That's it for them. They go the way of the Whig Party. And what will emerge on the ashes of the Democrats is an actual opposition party that doesn't play divide and conquer culture war politics, but instead taxes the shit out of billionaires and puts the power back in the hands of people. They made tactical, strategic mistakes that leave them vulnerable. What are these mistakes? What are you talking about, Butch? Make it plain. They have a jungle primary in the state of California. Not a partisan primary. You don't run in a Democrat primary and a Republican primary the way that Mamdani, did, running on Team Blue Genocide's primary. That's not how it works in California. It's an open primary. And that's actually designed to make sure that third parties never get a voice. It usually produces one blue versus one red and actually disempowers third party candidates. But there's this funny electoral fact about the state of California is that it's got enough actual radicals inside it as well as lots of liberals so that there are more registered independents in the state of California than there are registered Republicans. The Democrats are incredibly vulnerable to an attack from the left. Incredibly vulnerable. And they hide their primary, this jungle primary, where only the top two candidates emerge in June. Mark this date in your consciousness, engrave it there. 6/2/26. June 2nd, 2026. That's the last day of the primary. Ballots are going to get mailed out in early May. We're going to be canvassing, we're going to be knocking on doors, we're going to be phone banking early because we can do a lot of damage in May, but closing day is 6/2/26. And they hide this primary in June where they're not expecting people to vote. The turnout is low. The last primary, 2022, only 5.5 million people voted. Exactly. That's literally what I said when I saw that number. What? Well, why? Because it means that if you can engage and motivate specific sections of the electorate, you can run away with a primary because no one shows up. If we get out and work these streets, if we get out and work these phones, if we spread the word, it is not going to be difficult for us to get to at least second place in that primary. Second place in that primary creates a one-on-one matchup between me and whichever sorry corporate Democrat is running to be the new revolution. And that's a matchup that they can't win because they won't. First of all, because I was a vice presidential candidate and got almost 1 million votes for the White House, they've had to include me in all of the major California gubernatorial debates. And every time I'm in one of those, it's a bloodbath. Like they're just extremely mediocre, empty stuff suits, corporate frauds. And when people come into them and speak plain about universal health care, affordable housing, housing first, everybody eats before anybody gets seconds. Right? It's simple. Simple, straightforward policies that meet people's basic material needs. We wipe the floor with them every time. So what are they going to say? Oh, you're a spoiler. You're going to turn the state red. It's blue versus green. There is no red left at that point in the conversation. The one card that they have to play is off the table, and they will not be able to hide me from the media. What's going to happen? When people hear these words on mainstream media across the nation between June and November. Y'all think that we can't win. I know that we already have if we get 20% of the vote on June 2nd.
Yep.
It has never taken more than 23% of the vote to get to second place in that primary. Sometimes it's been as low as 15%. We're already polling, depending on which poll, at 2 to 4 times what Mamdani was polling in February. We already have better name recognition starting our campaign than he had in February. And we don't have to go from 1% to 50% the way that Mamdani did. We have to go from 2 to 4% to 15 to 20%. Easiest move in the world if we organize. If we organize.
Yeah.
Which is the nature of the call this evening. Afternoon. It's dark in here. This is not my campaign. This is the instrument that God has chosen in this moment to be the vehicle for delivering divine retribution. This is y'all's campaign. This is the campaign for every working person who has seen more and more of the sweat and the benefits of their toil going to others. This is for every single oppressed and marginalized community. And we need to get out there and organize like we're fighting for our lives, because we are. The darkness that I started addressing, the fascism as it creeps, the extent of the genocidal violence at home and abroad, we must understand that this may be the very last chance that we get. We have to understand that we are organizing for the very survival of humanity itself, because the United States government is the most dangerous instrument of surveillance and death dealing that has ever existed in human history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we must end It's imperial machinations before they end us all. This campaign is for y'all. If you have not yet volunteered, volunteer. If you have not yet donated, donate, because freedom ain't free. We are competing with people who are awash in blood money and genocide money. They're funded by AIPAC, they're funded by weapons manufacturers. We don't take a penny from any corporate or PAC sources. And I swear to you, my people, the way that my spiritual role model, the Prophet Muhammad, swore to his people, if they were to put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I would not desist nor betray you. These people do not have anything that they could try to buy me with that I want. The only thing that I have ever wanted since I was 15 years old was to see Liberation Day come, was to hold it with our hands, to see it with our eyes, to taste it with our tongue, and to pass it off to our children. And that's why I'm fighting, and that's why I hope you'll help us support and build this campaign. Peace and power. We got one more to close us. We had initially scheduled a Q&A, but we're close to 4 p.m. So I'm going to take questions for people that want to ask them privately in the back as we socialize and mingle on our way out. Do you have a final word for us? We're going to let Shida close us out.
I'm going to share a song that I've been singing for the past couple of years. I have the honor and privilege of